Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 1 Million Cent Podcast. My name is Ryan Fontenot, and as always, I am your host for today. On this podcast, we are here to help see 1 million teenagers around the globe trained to share the gospel by 2030. And my guest today, I think, is as big a part of seeing something like that happen as anybody I know. His heart for Jesus, his love for the next generation, and his desire to see teens equipped to know and go with the gospel is second to none. So would you all welcome me, or help me welcome my friend, Brian Baldwin. Brian, how's it going today, my friend?
Hey, man, it's going good. Ryan, thanks for inviting me on. Excited to talk to you. Me and you have the same heartbeat, and your listeners as well. So this is a special thing, man. Thanks for the invite.
Man, what a joy. Now, some of y'all can't tell maybe, but that map behind him is, in his own words, a map of the greatest state, Oklahoma, right there. It's making heaven. Brian serves churches in Oklahoma with the Oklahoma convention there.
Yeah.
So, Brian, tell people what you do a little bit real quick with them.
Yeah, so the Youth Evangelism and Missions Ministry partner. And so really we just kind of help our churches to inspire and equip their students to share the gospel and here, near, and far. So also in charge of our state youth mission sending organization called Ghost Students, and try to help multiply gospel advancing ministries, and just really and just all about kind of raising up the next generation to be goers for the gospel. So it's kind of what I do, and I mean, love to get to do it.
And you do it so well. Brian, I met a couple years ago, and immediately I was like, this dude is my guy. He's got the same heartbeat as I do. We don't want to just proclaim the gospel, which we, thankfully, Lord, you give us the opportunity to do, but we also want to equip others to do the same as well. And so, man, I'm excited. But before we jump in too deep, man, let's start today with some rapid fire questions. These are
Cool.
some to get us warmed up, man. Get them going, get our listeners engaged a little bit. So
Yeah.
number one, Brian, are you a coffee drinker or are you an energy drink guy?
Certainly a coffee drinker. I have this extra large cup every morning right here.
There we go.
Coffee man all the way.
Coffee it is, my friend. So having said that, does that mean you're a morning, midday, or night owl? When's your sweet spot of the day?
Man, I'm a morning guy. I love morning time. I'm usually about ready to go to bed around 9 p.m. right around the same time as my
Amen.
young children. So I love the mornings.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go, man. Well, I'm kind of with you there. So now, if you've got your family, you and your 4 kiddos and your bride, man, y'all are going to go on a trip. Are you going to fly, get to that
Ooh.
destination, let's get there, or are you a drive guy? Let's enjoy the journey, the scenery, and just enjoy the trip together.
You know, I fly all the time. It's the most efficient, but I get motion sickness, so I'm going to go drive, man. I would take it any day if I could. It depends on the distance, man, but I definitely pick driving if I could.
All right. Now, when you're driving, are you going to drive your family to the beach? Or are you guys going to drive to the mountains? Where are you heading?
My family would probably love to go to the beach. I'm a mountain guy. I ride mountain bikes, man. So I love
nice.
that whole life right there in the mountains. So definitely mountains.
All right, man. So y'all are on this journey. You've stopped and you've had an incredible dinner, and now it's time for dessert. Brian, are you going to reach for pie? Are you going to reach for cake, man? What are you going for?
And just like everybody else, I'm probably going to go with pie on that one, apple a la mode. You know, that would be top of the list, man. That'd be the last meal for me if I had to pick. So
I'm jamming with that, a little apple a la mode, no doubt. No, definitely the a la mode, man. I like that.
Yeah,
So well, maybe a little more spiritual here, man. So when you are jumping into just reading your Bible, man, you know, if you're your go-to, I would say, I know the answer is always, hey, it's both, but if you're just jumping in, a little inspiration, trying to get with the Lord, do you find yourself typically going Old or New Testament?
You know, I would probably say New Testament. I actually was thinking about that right in my Bible and in pencil. And if you're to look at like the notes and all the things, New Testament is certainly on the more red side, which I need to do better in the Old Testament. So I'm going to go New Testament, probably like most people.
Hey, that's all right. I like that. I like
Yeah.
that, man. That's good. That's good. So speaking of the New Testament, we've got four gospels that kind of record the life of Jesus, all these different perspectives. Our boys, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Now, if you had to pick one to roll with, what's the gospel? Who's your boy? Who you rolling with?
Man, I like them all for different reasons, but I got to go with John. It's
Yes.
written by Jesus' best
Okay.
friend. These things are written so that you would
Yeah.
believe. Man, the only gospel really as an evangelistic tool. Man,
Yeah.
got to go with John. It's my guy.
I love it. Not surprised, man. Not surprised at all. I like that a lot. So this last question I'm going to ask you is one I want you to answer, but not now. I want you to think about it. I want us to come back at the end. This is one we try to even let our listeners or watchers, our audience, really guess on. So the question is this, Brian: Are you a dog guy or are you a cat guy? Don't answer that just yet.
Mm,
Hey, if you're able to see Brian's face, or maybe you can just hear his voice, what
see
would
it.
your guess be? Look at this. Is this guy a dog guy or a cat guy? If you're able to drop in your guess, drop it in the comments. Drop a little dog emoji. Hit us with the cat emoji. I don't know. Let us know. What do you think? What do you think? Or maybe you drop the X for neither or the check mark for both. Who knows? So we'll see. We'll see what happens here.
Yeah,
Hey,
man.
Brian, well, man, well, so thankful you're on here, bro. And you shared a little bit about where you're at. You're in Oklahoma. You serve the churches there. But man, there's a lot of under what you do. You do the Youth Evangelism Conference, the Go Student, mission projects, and there's so much more. So tell us a little bit about what y'all are able to do in those different things.
Yeah, really, man. I just think about just being a source of inspiration and equipping for
Mm,
our
yeah,
churches. I mean, I think about what we do, just always putting in front of them ways to inspire and equip students to just share the
yeah,
gospel. And then
yeah,
give them the opportunities to actually do it. I think that's super important that there's an activation to all that because
yeah.
I've heard it said inspiration without activation leads to frustration. And so,
Ooh,
so really,
hold up. You got to say that again.
yeah,
Whoa, 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 whoa,
and
whoa, whoa. Sometimes we just got to pause, hit that
run it
rewind
back.
button and run it back, man. Say that again.
Yeah, so
Inspiration.
inspiration without activation leads to frustration. If you're pumped to
Mm,
do something and then you don't get a chance to actually do it, it's just kind of
yeah.
what was the point of all that? And so I think it's super
Mm,
important to not just train people how to do it, but to actually do it. The Great Commission says,
mm.
teach them to obey everything I've commanded you, not
Yeah,
just teach them everything I've commanded you. It's easy to teach
that's
people
good.
things. It's a lot harder to teach them to obey, and that's the
Yeah,
Great Commission right there. So, yeah, really just try to help,
so
man,
good.
our state to be have student ministries that are gospel advancing, and churches really in general, and really just multiply out. I'm kind
Yeah,
of focused more on really kind of multiplying out gospel advancing leaders because
yeah,
it's more addition is good, but we really want to
yeah.
go for multiplication. And if we can get a
That's
hold of those
good.
shepherds to really have a heart to really just
Mm-hmm.
gospelize everything they do, man,
Yeah,
that'll bear fruit for generations. And so
yeah.
stuff like that, man, it's a pretty fun job.
Yeah, man, I love it, and I know you're passionate about it, and it gets me amped up, man, every time we talk and sit down and have conversations. And so some people watching here, they're like, man, I just they're resonating with that, or they're sensing like, man, that's something that I'd love to know. How in the world did this guy get to do that? So, man, maybe some milestone moments. How did you get to where you are today?
Yeah, well, man, I kind of grew up heathen, didn't go to church. Had a friend invited me to church, and actually came to know the Lord at a drama, like a play. A family friend
Oh,
invited me
let's
to,
go.
and then got involved in church. And my youth pastor Jamie Ferris was my
Hmm.
Paul, and really discipled me through
Yeah,
student ministry, and had the biggest impact still to this day. And really kind of led me to, man, I want to do the same thing. And the Lord really confirmed that when I was about 19 years old. And first thought I could quit, school and be a youth minister because who needs education for that? And God
I
led me
don't
to,
know. Who needs to?
yeah,
That's easy.
God led me to get some education and further like just training and really being plugged into our home church as an intern, and
Yeah,
then got my first full time youth ministry position in Southeast Oklahoma, uh, God's
let's
country, because
go.
only God knows where it's at. Man, but it was a great season for us. And then we spent 9 years in Tulsa after that. And in those youth ministry years, really got a heart for evangelism. I kind of was missing out on the most exciting part of being a Christian. And
Yeah.
God just began to kind of show me even that, Philemon 1:6, how I want you to experience the full picture of what it means to follow Christ. And if you don't share in your faith, like you're not experiencing that. And it was
Yeah,
like,
man, that's
this is the
right.
most exciting part of being a Christian. So I was just kind of
Yeah.
going crazy with it. And probably my most passionate, years is, man, when I first really started to get a heart for evangelism personally, and then
Mm,
also in our student ministry, and
yeah.
that I think our state leaders kind of picked up a little bit on that, and so I did a lot of like trainings for some events for our state and other stuff, and that kind of led to a position opening up here for the youth evangelism guy, and they asked me to do that. And so, been 7 years now, been
Come
doing that,
on.
man. And so, it's the coolest job ever. And but I really have to say that our listeners that are shepherds of churches, actually shepherds, have probably
Hmm.
the more important job. It's easy to teach people things like we
Yeah.
do, but it's a lot harder to teach
Right.
them to obey. That's the role of a
Yeah.
shepherd. And so, I mean, I
Yeah.
spend a lot of my time just pouring into guys like that because, man, they're really the ones that are getting it done, like where the rubber
Hmm.
meets the road. And so,
Yeah.
so just love working with youth leaders, man. They're the best.
That's awesome, man. I love that, and I've seen you work with leaders and pour into and pray over and just have a true heart for leaders, and man, that's a special gift, and I want to thank you for that because you're right. That they're shepherding, and man, they need people to shepherd them. They need people to encourage them. They need people to walk alongside of them, and so man, thanks for what you're doing there, and I think that bleeds down obviously into their student ministries and things like that. So that maybe brings me to a next question. Why student ministry? Why teenagers? Why is it so important to get teens mobilized, trained, equipped, and sent with the gospel? If someone asks you that, like I am right now, Brian, why would you say, hey, this is why teenagers matter
Yeah.
tremendously?
Yeah, if you're listening, you probably know some of these things. Like, most people come to faith as a teenager. Something like 77% of people come to faith before
Hmm.
18, and 95% before age 30. And that's kind of next gen
Wow.
ministry, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Jesus, I think personally, Jesus was a youth leader. You look at some things in the New
Yes.
Testament, cross referencing the Old Testament. He probably was a youth leader, had one adult sponsor, and
Mm.
one really rotten kid named Judas in his youth group, and turned the
I
world
love
upside
it.
down. And
Yeah.
so I think about that. I think about revivals have always started with young people. I mean, I think even right now with everything going on in Asbury, and you look at
Hmm.
that, and it's always kind of come from young people. So why not work with them? And right now, Gen Z is the
Yeah.
largest generation. Teens are goers.
Yeah.
Always end YUC with asking people to take out their phone and start a gospel conversation. And 75% of the room usually indicates they do that. And I was asked to end our
Wow.
state evangelism conference where adults are in the room, a lot of church leaders, by the way, asked,
Yeah.
and I did the same thing. And maybe 15% of the room did it. And I'm like,
Wow.
teens are kind of
Wow.
goofy, kind of like they're not very smooth,
Yeah.
but they're more willing to be
Yeah.
goers of actually do it. And
Yeah.
so why not work with teens? And teens have friends, man. Average teen has 400 friends, in person or online or bigger in most churches. And I think that the
Mm.
Lord has always uses unexpected people. He's always used teenagers. And it's honestly, it's just God's will to reach the next generation. So if
Mm.
you're not passionate about that, then like you need to get on board with what God's heart is of us passing the baton to the next generation. And so you got to get on board with reaching teenagers and really just young people. It's something we all should be passionate about for sure.
Man, no doubt. I just echo amen, uh-huh, hallelujah, everything you just said, bro. It's so right on, so spot on. And I hope that as you're watching this or listening, wherever you are, that man, you're sensing the passion, but also, man, you're realizing, hey, is this an area that I can press into? How can I step into this space and be part of it? Because, man, I'm telling you, as Jesus said, what he said 2,000 years ago is still so true today. The harvest is plentiful, but the
Yes.
workers, the laborers are few. And man, that's 75-15 that you talked about. Students saying, "Hey, I started the conversation," or 15% of adults. That's so telling. And I believe it is absolutely true. But when it comes to teenagers, specifically, Brian, think with me here. They know they ought to be sharing the gospel, but many of them aren't. And so my question is, what can we do to help move that? What I like to say, move that needle of evangelism in the students' lives. How can we help them take those first steps? All of those things.
Yeah. Being a teenager, they're awkward, man. And I was the king of awkward. I was super shy, one of the shyest
Yeah.
people you've ever met. And now I stand on stage in front of 5,000 people. And, it's just something that I had to decide that I'm going to just deny myself and get over my uncomfortableness. So it is something that you can decide,
Hmm.
it's not just for type A personalities or anything. And I think a lot of students struggle. They don't know how to start, they don't know how to,
Yeah.
they're afraid they're going to say the wrong thing. I always think, are you worried they're going to go to hell number two if you do say the wrong
Yeah.
thing? Or, like, or they're afraid they're going to be a bad
Yeah.
witness, that their life
Oh
isn't
man.
perfect. And I'm like, well, get in line. That's all of us, right? I think a lot of people
Mm.
are afraid they won't make sense. They'll just start, mumbling about stuff, and or they're just going to be viewed as like some kind of crazy religious person,
Yeah.
or some of them think, man, I'm just so young, I don't know enough. And
Hmm.
honestly, one of the things I've run across a lot lately is that a lot of teens don't know any lost people, you know.
Wow.
And that they've maybe been insulated. And my kids go to a Christian
Yeah.
school, and I
Yeah.
mean, they're
Yeah.
they're they're around other believers all the time. And actually, as working at the church, man, most of our listeners, if you work full time at a church, you feel some of the
Yeah.
same things. And so you got to get out there and get a fishing spot. Some of those fishing spots
Yeah.
come easily for teenagers because they're in a public school setting, but some others, they gotta be around some lost people, right?
Yeah.
And so I think some of those are some
Hey,
challenges.
hey,
Really,
real quick, do you have a couple of ideas on fishing spots? People are listening, going, what does he mean by that? What maybe a couple of examples of good fishing spots for people?
yeah. I think for being a leader of youth, like we need to have that ourselves. And so for me,
Yeah.
I prayed, and God opened some doors, and some of them were a good fit, and some of them weren't. The
Yeah.
biggest door that God opened for me personally is going to do jail ministry. I think I know where some sinners
Yeah.
are,
There you go.
and
Yeah.
it's a captive
Yeah.
audience, so it's great. So I
Yeah.
actually go twice a week to the juvenile center here and share the
Okay.
gospel. And
Yeah.
but also I think, man, being a substitute teacher, or getting involved,
Ooh.
like sports teams and all that stuff. I think for students, man, just being in an extracurricular activity, maybe
Yeah.
be in that play or do that sports program, or whatever it is. If there's a
Mhm.
boys and girls club in your neighborhood, man, just start hanging out and go with some
Yeah.
friends and be around lost people, and just try stuff.
Yeah.
And really, I just pray that God will give you a fishing spot. I mean, that's what I did. I'm like,
Mm.
Lord, give me a fishing spot, and
Yeah.
He opened that
Yeah.
door for me. It was just like a total answer to prayer, and He'll do the same. And I think if you ask for that wisdom, the Bible says He'll give it. And so
Yeah.
that's super important, just to find that place, man, and keep doing it. And also,
Yeah.
this
It's
I'll say
so
this
good.
too. It's as you the Great Commission is really go, is some say that it's really best translated as you are going. And so in reality,
Yeah.
yes, Lord, as I'm going through my life, I'm on that plane, I'm in that, sitting by that
Hmm.
person, take the opportunities. But man, as a youth leader, I wanted every single week when I stand before my teens, like I wanted them to know I had a gospel conversation. Not
Mm.
maybe I,
Yeah.
I might, but like I'm definitely going to. And so if you have that
Yeah.
fishing spot, I just think is super important, to be able to
Yeah.
definitely, be able to have those conversations. So just a few things to think about.
That's good, man. I love that. And I think a lot of times we don't think about that. Like it's just the intentionality, and even the intentionality of praying, hey God, give me a spot, give me a place, give me a people. Even today, maybe unexpectedly, give me someone to come in contact with as well. The intentionality is so true. And so, well, Brian, I know you train a ton of people in sharing the gospel, and maybe sometimes they can get overwhelmed by, okay, this and this, whatever. What is one step? What is one first thing you would tell someone if they're like, hey, Brian, I want to become more um, competent and confident and consistent in sharing my faith. I want to be able to tell more people about Jesus. What's the first step you may communicate to them?
Yeah, I would think about one, just the fuel that you need
Mm-hmm.
to share the gospel. It's not necessarily about knowledge, or training. Like, we just need the motivation to to
Mm-hmm.
do it, and so it's
Yeah.
something that's not like you do that one time and there it is. Like, there needs to be a
Yeah.
source, almost like you have to keep putting car
Mm-hmm.
fuel in your car, right? So that whole,
Yeah.
like, gospel urgency fuel. And so whatever really
Mm-hmm.
kind of like fuels you to share your faith, it could be the command that we're called to go, like
Mm-hmm.
Jesus told us to do it. So
Yeah.
yes sir, I want
Yeah.
to do that.
I'm done. Yeah.
It could be just compassion for people, that there's a, in a sense, there's a hell they're going to, and there's a hell they're going through. And really just
Yeah.
knowing, man, we need to, like, because we have compassion on people, we should want to share
Mm-hmm.
with them, not just for
Yeah.
their eternity's sake, but man, in this life, like, they need Jesus right now, to just
Yeah.
put that fuel in you. But I think too, man, the fuel, like investments too, to, Jesus says, store up for
Mm-hmm.
yourself treasures in heaven, to, you're faithful with the
Yeah.
small things here, much I'll put you in charge of in the kingdom of God. And so I think about the investment of, like, man, this life is moving so fast. I want to invest wisely. And so that whole, like, inspiration, right, needs to be
Yeah.
before you need to hear
That's
it.
right.
I actually have this in my office, this little clock, and it's it just says now on it instead of the
Oh,
numbers.
wow.
And I hear it, like,
Wow.
I hear the TikTok, in there,
Yeah.
and it's just kind of a reminder to listen to the, the TikTok of the eternity clock, that it is counting
Yeah.
down. We want to
Now is the time.
Yeah, we want to invest. So it's, man, because we can get busy and all of a sudden, like, we're doing all the things besides the primary task. And so I think putting
Yeah.
that in front of you is super important. That gospel urgency,
Mm-hmm.
and then getting into, man, that whole being fluent, in sharing the gospel and gospel
Yeah.
strategy. And I mean,
Yeah.
I think that's super important. And then the whole gospel mobilization part too, of, like, we
Yeah.
got to be thrust ourselves into those opportunities, and we got to thrust
Mm-hmm.
students into those opportunities, actually doing it, not just
Yeah.
talking about it, but being about it. I think is super
Mm.
important to this, to doing it. So
Yeah, man. That's awesome. All those, man, there's just so much good stuff there. I hope you guys are taking notes. I hope you're writing some stuff down because there's so much goodness right here. So, Brian, and I want you guys developed an app that is, I think, super helpful. It helps encourage, it helps train, and this app that you guys have developed. Can you share about that with us?
yeah, it's called the Good News Coach app. And so Good News is sort of like our acronym for gospel strategy. It's not a presentation. It's just covering the main points of being excellent
Hmm.
at gospel conversation. And so we
Yeah.
developed the app called Good News Coach, which trains in that, has, these about 13 of these short little 2-minute videos to help really kind of train in
Yep.
that. But also, really, the most important part of it is the accountability, where it's an app to help kind of move you from talking about this or just being trained in this, but to
Hmm.
actually do it. A lot of people will, most people think that, if something's important and it's expected of you to do something, that you'll actually do it. But people don't do
Yeah.
what's expected. They typically do
Mm.
what's inspected. And that's true,
Mm.
right? You go to your, the kids
Yeah.
at the school. I mean, if the teacher said, here's a chemistry book, we expect you to read it and learn the material. If they aren't actually, like, inspected, they're probably not going to do it. And the same it
Yeah.
is, man, at work.
That's right.
I mean, if your boss doesn't every once in a while kind of check you in and make sure you're doing the things that they're paying you to do, you might not do it as much or as well. And so, really accountability is very biblical, not just for the sins of commission, but the sins of omission. And we need to know that to
Yeah.
not share the gospel as a Christian is a sin of omission. It's not like we didn't
Yeah.
do
Yeah.
the top tier thing of being a Christian. Like that's the primary task that Jesus commanded
Right.
us to do. And so we need accountability for sins of omission. And so the Good News Coach is really just a simple tool to help be inspected, I guess, in a little bit. So
Yeah.
a student can be a
Yeah.
learner on there, and they can invite as many coaches as they want. They'll get a push notification once a week asking them to check in to rate the effort they made in sharing the gospel that
Yeah.
week. And so just a little emojis to really quickly do that. And then their coach, every time they
Yeah.
check in, they can see, how they're doing. Or if they're not checking in at all, that coach can there's a messaging board within the app and be able to say, hey, you asked me to, encourage you to do this. And,
Yeah.
encouraging is arm around the shoulder. Good job. You did it. But also
Right.
encouraging is also hand in the back of like, hey,
Yeah.
we're called to actually do this. You asked me to hold you accountable to it. And so here I am. It's a great tool for that, and good way to kind of measure how you're doing with not only the training side, but also actually doing it. So you can have as many coaches as you want,
Yeah.
as many learners as you want, and it's a great way for youth leaders to let those youth invite them to be their coach. Or a Sunday school teacher or a pastor or whatever, and gives many people to kind of let them see how they're doing, and there can be some encouragement. Again, just good job, but also, hey, let's get moving on this. Let's go. What coach is there to make you
Yeah.
better, right? So it's just a tool
Yeah.
for that. And so I encourage you to check it out. Goodnewscoach.com is kind of the landing page, but you can just
Yeah.
put Good News Coach in the App Store. There's also some great promo tools at goodnewscoach.com. And
Yeah.
even the videos, training stuff, if you want to do that as a group. But it's a good tool.
Hmm.
It's about a $55,000 app. They're not cheap, and we want to give it to people for free. We tried to keep our Oklahoma Baptist stuff off it. So no matter who you are, you can kind of be your tool and use it
Yeah.
with your students. So I encourage you guys to check it out. It's a definitely a helpful tool.
It is. It is. And Brian and I are on there together, and we check in randomly with each other. And I know he's got other guys he's with. And I just encourage you, if you're a youth leader or a student, even, and you're trying to get more consistent in sharing the gospel, this app will be absolutely phenomenal. I totally recommend, especially if you're a student leader, go check it out and spend some time. I would even say over a series of Wednesday nights, like rolling this out and explaining it and walking through it. And go to goodnewscoach.com, check that thing out. And man, well done on the app, bro. One of my favorites. So thanks for what you do there. Well, Brian, before we jump off, man, I like to share stories, and I think stories spur up and stir us up, And so I was wondering, is there a story that kind of stands out to you with some teenager somewhere that you saw? Well, what I like to say, they just got it, and they got it. The fire was lit, and man, you saw them catch fire for Jesus. Share a story like that with us, man.
Yeah, man, lots of stories. And I would say too, before I share like a specific story, that there are some teenagers that I would never have expected to just be a gospel advancing leader,
Yes.
and now they're like on the mission field or they're in
Yep.
ministry, and like, wow, that seed did go in there, and I didn't get
Yeah.
to see that on my end, but man, it came right out. And so, but I
Yeah.
think too, I was thinking about this student named Emma Gullickson. She's come to YUC, really inspired to share her faith. Even like had her come back and help teach some of that good news stuff on that YUC
Mm-hmm.
stage. And we did it during the pandemic. We just talked about one a day in May, basically having one kind of gospel
Mm.
conversation type thing a day in May. It was during the pandemic and everything, and so we were encouraging people to use
Mm-hmm.
technology, one a day. And she took it to the next level. Her goal was to have 100 gospel conversations during that month, and she did
Wow.
it, man. Like she did it, and I just think,
Wow.
dude, that is the payoff. When it comes
Yeah.
to what we're trying to do to inspire and equip
Mm-hmm.
students, like it. That is one of those,
Yeah.
you don't get a youth ministry for the paycheck, but the payoff is when you see, okay,
Yeah.
like that was a real thing that happened. And
Yeah,
so she's
man.
even to this day seeking to be, man, just a gospel
I love
advancing
it.
person. And she's been on our mission trips and all that too. It's just neat to see her. But there's lots of stories like that, and there's also, man, lots of frustration too. And so youth leaders
That's
out there
right.
like waiting for
Absolutely.
good
Yeah,
stories. I'm
man.
like, sometimes it takes a
Yeah.
long time, but man, just keep
Yeah.
being faithful, right? Keep being faithful to do
I
it.
love it. Yeah, that's so true. There's the incredible highs and the awful lows and everything in between. And so, well, man, thank you for being on here today. And before we go, we need to circle back to this most pressing question:
Ah,
Is Brian Baldwin, is he a dog guy or a cat guy? Where are you at, man?
all right, man. So I got to go with neither. All right, and so it's
Oh,
actually really funny
oh,
because my kids, when we moved to Oklahoma City, it didn't go so well. We dropped the news and we told the kids, when we get to our new house, we're going to get a
no.
dog, and so we got the dog, and about 2 years later, actually, the person watching it, I guess it got out or something and got ran over, which was like horrible for our kids. But in my mind, I'm like, I don't take care of a dog anymore, and so maybe that sounds awful. I don't know, but I am not an animal person. And actually, my daughter
Okay.
the other night, man, sent me the little video, a compilation of cute dogs, trying to
Yeah,
manipulate me, and I'm like,
that's right, man.
didn't
They're,
phase me,
they're
and so
they're reeling you in, bro. They're reeling you in.
yeah,
Another dog is coming.
no, man, I did that, paid my dues, and so we're good. No dogs, no pets, no anything. So,
I'm calling it. I'm calling it, Brian. I'm calling it.
oh,
Uh, I'm calling it, bro. By YEC 2024, you're gonna have another dog.
hey, man, I don't know. I mean, even last night, she talked about it. There were some tears in her eyes about I really want to get a dog, and I'm like, nope. So I have a cold heart, and so some of you guys don't understand that.
Mm,
Some of you do, but
yeah,
life is just too
we need it.
complicated for us for having pets. So
We're gonna pray for Brian after we get off here. I love it, man. I love it, man. Well, tell it. How can people keep up with you? How can they reach out to you as
yeah,
people watch or listen, man?
I'm not huge social media, but I am on Facebook, kind of old school. And Brian with an I, Thomas Baldwin, or man, just a good old email at bbaldwin at Oklahoma Baptists with an S.org. I'd love to connect with you and help you any way I can. But yeah, definitely reach out and let's do this together.
Awesome, man. Awesome. Well, Brian, thanks for being on. Hey, we'll drop the link to the Good News Coach app as well. All of his information there. You can contact with him. Brian, thanks for being on here. And hey, thank you for being part of the audience today. And I hope that you are encouraged and inspired as we continue to try to train 1 million teens around the globe to share the gospel by 2030. We're excited for what God is doing, and we know that, hey, telling people about Jesus is not just a 1 day thing, it's a 2 day thing. So don't forget this. Today is a great day to tell someone
Yeah.
about Jesus. So let's go.